Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Chris Litrell. I was born and raised here in the Tri-Cities. After graduating high school and getting married at the young age of 19, I joined the Air Force and traveled around the world, both in Korea and Iraq in 2004, and then separated from the Air Force in 2005. Should I keep going?
Yeah.
So when I got out of the Air Force, my wife and I, we settled in North Seattle, up in the Everett area. I became a civilian police officer for the Linwood Police Department. Served there for a couple years, and then in 2007, my wife and I relocated back here to our home, the Tri-Cities, where I was hired at Kennewick Police as a police officer, and continued there for another 17 years, and just retired here November 1st. My wife and I have 4 daughters. The oldest is 22 and the youngest is 12, and my wife's a high school English teacher at Kamiakin High School.
And you also run a podcast. What is it called, and what is it about?
Yeah, so my wife and I co-host the Gravity podcast. Our focus is on mental and physical health, in particular for the first responder and military communities. And we just saw, especially during COVID, that it's been hard on everyone across our community, and within kind of some of our circles, seeing the impact that it had on firefighters and dispatchers and police officers and military veterans. We wanted to create a space where we could bring people on, talk about what they did to take care of themselves and their families, and then hopefully just spread that messaging to other people.
Oh, you don't need my question. Why did you join?
Why? You know, my brother joined the Air Force, and I remember I was working at Food Pavilion. It was a grocery store where the Kennewick School District building is now. And I dressed up in his Air Force uniform for Halloween, and I felt like $1 million. Just being in this uniform and feeling like I was, even though I wasn't part of something bigger than myself at the moment, I felt like I was maybe part of something bigger. And my wife and I, we were going to Columbia Basin College at the time. We were walking through the hub, like the cafeteria area, and there was this Army recruiter in his Class A uniform, and he looked sharp. And I looked at my wife and I said, maybe I should join the military. And man, this has been burned into my mind. My wife goes, babe, if you want to do it, let's do it. We only get to live this life once. And my wife has had that attitude so many times through our life. One of my injuries from military and policing is PTSD, and my wife has been my rock through all of that and really led our family at times that I was just incapable. And yeah, I said, why don't I join the military? And my wife said, do it if you want. So we went and talked with an Air Force recruiter because of the connection of my brother serving in the Air Force. And we walked out of there and we signed on the line and lived the adventure for 6 years. Really loved the military life. We really thought about doing that for a lifetime, if you will, for 20 years. However, I'd missed both of my daughters' first birthday at that point. I was deployed to Korea for the first one and Iraq to the second daughter's first birthday, and that was really our decision point. Was I wanted to be present for the big moments for my kids, and so we got out. And while I miss the people, I miss the memories, I don't regret getting out of the Air Force when I did.
So you, during your service when you were in, what was the hardest part? Who was your service hardest on?
My service was hardest on my family.
And why?
Because when people experience stress and loss and death is not unique. We all experience that in life. What's uncommon for military members and our veterans and our first responder community is just the volume at which they deal with it. They deal with it so much more. I mean, the average person, I've heard different statistics, the average person is going to experience like a really traumatic thing 5 or 6 times in their life. And there's people that experience it a lot more and people that experience it less, but roughly 5 or 6 times. And I've heard numbers of police officers on average experience it like a few hundred times in their careers. And so that's what's uncommon, and our human brain just wasn't meant for that. But when I first joined the Air Force in 1999, we weren't talking about this. We weren't talking about the fact that, like when I was in Iraq, we got attacked. And while they asked us when we came home, hey, are you okay? Like, we all said we're okay, because we knew if we said we weren't okay, we weren't going home right away. So yeah, we're okay. And so we really weren't talking about the mental injury that takes place when you experience like life and death situations, especially when you experience a lot of them. And so I was wearing it home, and my wife saw it on me. And she wouldn't tell me because she wanted to keep that secret so that she could read it on me before knowing. And she just knew that if she saw it on me, and she needed to handle everything to do with the kids in that moment. If they started to fight, she would try to keep them calm, because I would respond big. If one of my daughters hit the other one, man, I'm in their face, thinking I'm teaching them, you don't mess with my girls. Really what I was teaching them is that dad is big and scary. And so it really impacted me, but it was really in my blinders of how it was impacting my wife and my daughters. And that this last summer I had a case where a 14-year-old's mom had said some really mean things to her. And I'm kind of playing it down a little bit, but she didn't physically touch her. And I was weeping for like a week and a half afterwards. And that's when I realized I just can't do this anymore. It's been 25 years from the Air Force and civilian policing, and my family my family's gonna get a better second version of me than they got a first version of me. And so I'm enjoying it because I'm getting to do that now. I'm getting to pick my daughter up from school at the end of the day, and those type of things. And but that's the hard thing for the military family. That's the hard thing for the first responder family, is we're just starting to talk about this stuff and be honest about it. I think both as a big American culture and in those career fields, those smaller families. And we're going to do better, but it's going to take us some time before we normalize the mental injury that really takes place.
So I really want to focus on that, because it's something that's so hard for people to talk about.
Yeah.
And so can you walk me through briefly your journey in realizing what was your issue?
Yeah.
And how did you finally force yourself to get help? Because that's a big barrier for everybody. It's
absolutely.
Realizing it is one thing, taking action to try and fix it or deal with it is quite another. Talk to me about that for you.
So I was a trained peer, meaning I was given a higher level of training of how to help officers when they were struggling. And I was struggling, and I just didn't realize it. There were little cues, like reading a Cabbage Patch Kids book to my daughters, and I would start to cry. And then I would think about my detective work from the day. I was a child crime detective at the time, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It really didn't grab my attention and force me to do something about it until in 2010 I had a series of massive anxiety attacks that manifested themselves like a heart attack. And the first time we called an ambulance, and I sat on the floor and got ready to die. And my wife was calling 911, and we got help back then. And I allowed my doctor and my therapist to do the work with me, and it healed my brain. And I set boundaries, and I stepped out of some of the work, like the child abuse cases day in and day out that was bothering me. And I did really good for about 13 years. And then stuff was starting to bother me again, and I had some really good stress management skills in place, talking about it with friends, exercise, thinking I was getting good sleep, but then also drinking a lot of alcohol on the weekends to where I really wasn't getting quality sleep on those weekends. And so it wasn't until, it grabbed my attention probably around March or April, and so I started seeing a counselor again. And then in June, I went to bed one night and I just spiraled. I almost had another massive anxiety attack that felt like it was going to be a heart attack. And I just wasn't going to screw around this time. When that happened, there were some pretty violent, intrusive thoughts that started going through my mind about me hurting myself. And I just wasn't going to mess around. So I got my phone, I messaged my doctor and said I need a higher level of help. And she had already been working with me a little bit. And then about a week and a half after that, I checked myself into a PTSD recovery center that really focuses on veterans and first responders, and started doing some really hard work in healing my brain. And I call it that, healing your brain, because they can scan our brain and actually see how the structures in our brain change when you have trauma and life and death type situations at volume. And so, I mean, it really is an injury. It's not just a problem. It's not just an illness. It's an injury, and there's a lot of great science out there about how we can heal the injury, but we're still kind of behind the curve in the way we think, I think, in society, because we really, I think, still look at it as a weakness and an injury versus, or excuse me, a weakness and an illness versus an injury.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then also, so talk to me about what it's like. 'Cause it's not healed, but you call yourself a survivor, PTSD survivor. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I know people that didn't survive. They ended up killing themselves. And so when it comes to a mental injury, I mean, that's kind of the greatest threat. I mean, there's other risks involved. Sometimes instead people will just start engaging in risky behavior, and that will lead to their demise. But for a lot of either friends or friends of friends, them not surviving it was them killing themselves. And so I had some really heroic people in my story who came and supported me and had the courage to share their story with me. And that, even though I had some counselors that I trusted that were telling me, hey, this is really normal. It's a normal way for your brain to react to the not normal volume of stuff you saw. But I didn't totally believe them. It was the peers, it was the men and women that had experienced it themselves that came up to me and said, hey, Chris, let me tell you my story. And when I listened to them, like, I really started to believe that I'm gonna be okay. Like, I gotta be disciplined about doing the work. Just like if I blow out my knee, I'm gonna go to a physical therapist. I've done this before, and I'm disciplined to do the work because I trust the physical therapist knows what they're doing. The same thing's true with our brains. If we have to have a trusting relationship with a counselor, a therapist, and then we have to let them coach us and do the hard work of getting better. So that's part of why I share my story. I share it on my podcast. I share it on social media. I write articles for a police magazine talking about it. And I'm really vulnerable sometimes about it because there were those people that I don't want to be overly dramatic and say saved my life, because I wasn't suicidal. The intrusive thoughts were not something that I thought I was going to do in the moment. They were just scaring the crap out of me, that they were there. And so, but who knows, if I wouldn't have dealt with it, maybe those intrusive thoughts would have gotten to the point where I would have started considering following through on them.
We have a lot of, so Friends of Disabled Veterans, a big volunteer organization.
Yeah.
Most of our, I want to call them members, but you don't sign up or anything, you just come out and do what you can. But trying to get that community to talk to each other can be such a challenge, because it is a hidden illness or a hidden injury.
Yeah.
And how do you get people to talk about it?
Yeah.
How do you get people to talk to their peers about it?
Well, first of all, anytime you're dealing with the military or the first responder communities, they are very tribal. Unless you are part of the tribe, they are not going to trust you.
Yep.
And so even with each other, I mean, when you know that there's someone else who's a veteran or someone who's served in some of our emergency responding services, like right off the bat, you're going to give them a little bit of trust. Like when I showed up to the PTSD Recovery Center, none of the people had to prove themselves to me. Like right off the bat, I was just going to trust them because I knew that they all had somewhat of a similar background. So the way that we can get people talking is for us to tell the version of the story that we felt comfortable telling, meaning veterans and first responders, especially like the ones that are still on the job, the men and women that are serving in our armed forces, the men and women serving in those emergency services. I really push the senior individuals, hey, if you had a really tough call the day before, even if you're doing okay with it, if it bothered you even a little bit, the next day when you show up to work, say that to the younger guys and gals. Tell them, hey, that baby death yesterday, that really bothered me and I couldn't go to bed for 2 hours. How did it impact you all? And when it comes to veterans, when we connect with other veterans, same thing. When we connect with another veteran, being honest with some of these type of things. We don't have to tell everybody all our story. That's That's for us to choose when we have that trust factor. But if we can give it a shot and share a piece of it, that, yeah, I struggle to sleep sometimes. And sometimes I have bad days. Some days I have to go and take a nap at 1 o'clock because of just the consequence of these jobs. I think that starts to where other people are like, I struggle with that too. And it really begins the conversation where we can start to relate with each other and start to remember that, hey, I'm normal. This is actually what should be happening because of the not normal stuff that I've seen and done, and giving ourselves some grace in that. That's the hard thing that I've heard from a lot of veterans, is they don't want to give themselves grace. They beat themselves up for failing as women, as men, as wives and husbands and moms and dads, and all these different roles we play. We beat ourselves up for our failures instead of recognizing that, sometimes we're just not going to be our best, and we're going to move past that and give ourselves grace. And I'm not going to define myself by what I've done, but instead I'm going to define myself by this constant effort to be the version of me that I know I can be, and the version of me that I want to be to my wife and my girls.
If you could impart some wisdom on civilians,
yeah,
regarding service, public service, military, police, first responders, what do you want them to know?
Honestly, it's what the Tri-City community does a lot. During COVID, all the time I had citizens walk up to me when I was in uniform as a Kennewick police officer and shake my hand and just say thank you. You don't got to give me money. You don't got to give me gifts. In fact, we're not allowed to accept those. Just a simple thank you. And I try to do it now, especially when I see an older veteran wearing a service hat. Just go up and thank them for serving in the Korean War, or the Vietnam War, or if we still have a couple World War II veterans around, just those simple thank yous. I mean, I see it on other veterans' faces. I see it on other first responders' faces because it makes the tough days less tough when you just know that you're appreciated for the stuff that you had to do.